I assume that you're going to be talking about some of the rather advanced peripherals and add-ons that were designed by JAFA Systems and yourself back in the day for the Electron.
Advanced is I wouldn't use the word advanced about them.
Well, at least relative to some of the competition, present individuals excluded from that.
Yes.
Anyway, perhaps if I could hand over to you, we've got the recording going now, and so if you just want to crack on with your talk.
Yeah, okay, right. I was surprised when Dave asked me to give this talk, because I wasn't aware there was that much interest in it, but we'll see how it goes as we go along. So I've called it JAFA Systems and Me, and I'm afraid that most of it is going to be me, because being now in the government's at-risk age list, my life is a lot longer than JAFA Systems. So anyway, we'll start going. First of all, I've often wondered whether people would think it was a misspelling of the word JAFA for orange, but it's not. It's just an acronym based on my wife and my bank account, John and Fiona Ann JAFA. So that was where that name came from. And we've been here before. Someone, I'm not sure who, posted up a copy of this article on Stardot recently. So I hope you've all read it and you're all well up to speed with who I am and what I did. And quite a bit of it, I'm afraid, is going to be repeated here, because, well, that's just the way it is. That's just the fact of the case. But for a start, a bit about me. For what it's worth, I have a degree. I'm a retired member of the Institute of Physics and Engineering in Medicine, and when I was working, I was entitled to use the chartered scientist. I was entitled to call myself a chartered scientist. I grew up in Warrington. I did my degree in electronics at the University of Canterbury, and then spent 42 years in hospital electronics and computing. And of course, the interesting bit about that was when we had things to make to expand the work of the department to do various things. And when I was in Plymouth, we started doing microprocessor development, and we were using I don't know if anyone's aware of the KIM-1, but it was similar to an MK14 from Acorn, in that it was a single board with 7-segment displays and a telephone-style keyboard for entering machine code by hand. There were no assemblers or anything. You just had to get a piece of paper and write it all down and work out your own branches and things. And after that, I was in Cardiff, and we started off developing 6809 systems. I joined that project halfway through, which was so it was basically, it was fixed at it being 6809. Eventually that moved on to PC system management, and I was involved in Windows and Linux system management and design. And I also ran websites for work and for various medical user groups that came into existence. But being a nerd, electronics was also my hobby, right from a teenager. And before that, I think it might be based on the fact that my father was a radio mechanic in the RAF in the Second World War, and he'd be dismantling old the current, well, the TV sets at the time that we had to clean up the valves, or the tubes, as the Yanks would call them. And that got me interested in the subject. And as a teenager, I was building magazine projects from the various magazines. And there was a shop near school. It's called Government Surplus Supplies, and I was a regular visitor, buying things like transistors and resistors and capacitors to make up the various projects. And I also built some of the Sinclair kits that were around at the time. But into my 20s, I wanted to write my own magazine article. And Wireless World had a project previously for a teletext decoder, which was considered, I think it was 2 boards of perhaps about, I don't know, 20 IC integrated circuits each, to do the decoding. And so they'd had this discrete circuit, so I thought they might be interested in something I'd designed, which was a circuit to play a game. It was actually Hangman. I approached Wireless World, and they said they weren't interested because my microprocessors were coming. So I trundled on a bit, and they started to get articles in the magazines about the NASCOM 1, and this appealed to me because it was a kit. You built it yourself. They gave you the, well, they didn't give you, you bought the board and the integrated circuit and all the components. And so it was build it yourself, which appealed to me. It had a real keyboard, and it had a real TV output, unlike the other sort of microprocessor kits at the time. Unfortunately, it cost £200, and I didn't have £200 to spend. So I went along to the bank, and in those days, the bank manager was a real, he had a lot of authority. And if you wanted money, you had to go and speak to your bank manager and get a loan. So I went along, and I told him that if I had this, it would really enhance my promotion prospects at work. So he said he'd never heard that before, but he gave me the money, and I bought the thing. And it had text only, but no graphics. So I set about designing a graphics unit for the NASCOM 1, and had it published in Computing Today in December 1979. And it only had 1K of user memory. So I wrote a chess recorder, not a playing program, but a recording program for recording the moves you made in your chess game. And they published that the following month, in the January. So that was the NASCOM, and then started looking for something else. And I was always keen to get something that had expansion possibilities. And the next thing I settled on was the Jupiter Ace, which I don't know if any of you know about it, but you probably do. But those are similar age to mine will know of it. And it was similar to the ZX80. It was designed by 2 people who'd been on the Sinclair team at Cambridge. Again, it had a Z80 processor, so I was familiar with that. But it ran Forth as a programming language, and it had a black and white display with text and character graphics, the graphics similar to the Sinclair machines. So I designed a color board for it, and had it published in Electronics Today International. And there is the picture of, or diagram of, the board. And at that time, I didn't have any computer design facilities for producing the boards. So what you could do was you had black tape. You could buy sticky black tape and black IC pads, and you stuck them onto a piece of paper and photographed it onto transparent perspex type material, and then you could take it along to your local PCB manufacturing place, and they could make the boards. So so that was what I did, and I had the boards made, and sold a few of them. And then after that, I went on to the Electron. The BBC was too expensive for me, so I got an Electron, and So my first project for the Electron was the speech synthesizer Electron speaker, and that was published in ETI in November '84. And it's you can see from this that I didn't have a +1 at that time. I had to connect it to the back of the Electron, so it had an Electron edge connector on it, and so that went on for a while, and then I started on the second processor, and that was published in ETI in July 1985. And by this time I had a +1 and a +3 disk drive, so this was designed to plug into the +1 unit. And by this time I'd gained some experience of selling the circuit boards. With the NASCOM graphics card, I had approached a local electronics store, but that wasn't really successful. They spent their time trying to improve the design instead of actually advertising it for sale, which I wasn't really very happy about. So with the ACE color board and the Electron speaker, I sold the boards myself with moderate success, and then a bit more success with the second processor. But prior to this, I had dealings with a firm called Permanent Memory Systems in East Kilbride near Glasgow, and they were producing 64K battery-backed RAM module for the BBC, and I was interested in modifying it to work on the Electron. So I'd spoken to them and had some dealings with them about doing that. So when the second processor came out, I forget whether I approached them or they approached me, but we came to a royalty agreement. So they would supply a commercial version of the board while I continued to sell the kits. They redesigned the board and added a BBC version, and I still have the royalty receipts that they sent me, or not receipts, but they sent me for the period August '86 to March '87, and in that period they sold 400 units, and that was a not inconsiderable amount of money coming to me in royalty agreements, in royalty payments. And they eventually advised me that they were having to declare these payments to the taxman to get tax relief on it. So I really needed to get an accountant myself and declare the income before the taxman came after me. And so that was what I did. And this eventually, when I selected me setting up JAFA systems to launch the Mode 7 unit. I launched the Mode 7 unit at I'm not sure what it was called, but it was basically the Acorn user show in 1987, and produced this flyer for it. And I very modestly said that it was the most important expansion yet to the Electron's display facilities, and gave a brief description of what it was on the flyer. Roland Wadilove gave it a good review in the Electron user, and I must say that initially I didn't really have a proper case for it, and it was at the show that I forget his name now. It wasn't actually the guy who ran Slogger, but it was the guy who, I think it was the guy who spoke to on the phone when you rang them. He came up and he suggested the firm in Kent who made Slogger's case for the +2, I think it was the +2 unit. And so I approached them and said I wanted something similar to Slogger, but it had to be different in this way and this way and that way. And they came up with the board. I had to pay the tooling costs for it. And then they were, so I was able to supply them a case, the Mode 7 unit in a case. And the flush with success then, I went to the Electron and BBC Micro user show in Manchester in 1988, and you had to write something for their program. So again, very modestly, well, you have to boost these things, don't you, in what you're saying about them. And so I wrote a little spiel about it to go in the program. And they interestingly, well, maybe not, but they also had a, oh yes, there's my stand. This is, I've just taken this photo from that article, and that itself was a copy of a print I had that had been taken at the show. So it's not a very good quality picture actually. But for the kids at the show, they had a treasure hunt, and you had to identify different stands at the show. And I'm there at number 17. Peel this orange to find cheese, which of course is a reference to JAFA and Caerphilly, where I'm based. Again, it was Roland Wadilove. Oh yes, and at the show, I brought out my new unit, which was the ROMPlus 144, which was a I don't know if you can see. Oh yes, here we are. Which was a ROM board for the +1, and it's Roland Wadilove there gave it quite a good review. This is the one board that I still have, and I don't have the operating system ROM for it, and I can't find. I've looked through all the archives that are on the site, and I can't find any. I did find one for JAFA ROMPlus, which, oh great, that's it. But it was just the small header that the ROM filing system produces in the ROM. It was only a short file, and it was no use at all. This had a RAM filing system on it, as you can see on the label there. It had those things in it. And here's my advert, the ROMPlus 144, and the Electron Mode 7 adapter, and the original E2P second processor. Also, I'd been approached by a guy, I forget his name, Tendine Software, to bundle his Mode 7 screen editor, which he called View Data, with my Mode 7 with my Mode 7 adapter, which I did. I sold, or we sold, quite a few of those. And then it was on to the Mode 7 Mark II internal unit. This is one that I still have. I still have two of them actually. I have one that's unmade, and but they're different. I found this one had because it was using the ULA to scan the RAMs to get the addressing for the screen. I had to have a way of detecting when the ULA had reached the end of the screen, the end of the frame, and I did that by detecting the high order bits of the addresses that were being sent to the RAM. And this was fine. I had a NAND gate to pick out the high order gates, and then I found the high order bits, and then I found that some ULAs invert the addresses going to the RAM. So instead of just looking for high order addresses, for high addresses, I had to look for low addresses as well, with some ULAs. So I had to change that NAND gate for a data selector so you could choose whether you were looking at all ones or all zeros for the frame refresh. I was also keen that the Mode 7 systems should support programs that are available for the BBC. WordWise was the obvious one, and there was also a PACE Micronet system. Micronet was a bulletin board system. I forget the actual details of it, and so I wanted to ensure that they would work with those, which involved quite a bit of hacking of the code to cope with the different hardware addresses and things on the BBC. But I was able to do it, and so that worked. So I've still got the Micronet ROM, which is why I'm able to show this screen now. And by the time I'd got to the Mode 7, to the simulator, the software simulator, I was including a Prestel terminal within the ROM, So there is the terminal screen, and the modems at the time obviously worked at the extremely high rate of 1200 baud, 1200 bits per second, which you can imagine wouldn't be very successful these days. Oh yes, so my final product list was the original Mode 7 hardware unit, which I sold as a kit and ready-made. And I must say that some people had problems with this. I had one kit, one guy rang me up and said that it doesn't work. So I asked him to send it back to me. And what he had was the board with the all the components sticking in it and the leads bent over, but not soldered. So I had to call him back and say that I had a fitting service for £10. So for £10, I'd be willing to solder it all up for him and send it back, which was what I did. I also had the kit and ready-made versions of the internal Mode 7, the simulator ROM, the second processor kit, the ROMPlus 144, and I had by that time produced an RS423 adapter for the +1, so for connection to modems. This was with the integral sideways ROM and RAM, so you didn't lose out, so you could still have a sideways ROM in your +1 socket. And for a short while I did my own version of the master RAM board. There was a period of, I don't know, from memory it was probably about 2 or 3 months when Slogger went offline and you couldn't contact them and you couldn't order master RAM boards from them. And I was going spare because my internal Mode 7 and the Mode 7 simulator unit, because they needed the high memory screen modes, relied on having master RAM boards to make up for the programming memory for the Electron. So I designed my own master RAM board with PALs instead of some of the integrated circuits, and started selling that. And then after a few months, I got a cease and desist letter from Slogger. They were back online and wanted their market back, so I stopped doing that. But of course, because they were back in action, it didn't affect my sales of the internal and simulator units. And after that, it was all over. From memory, I think it was probably about 93, 94. I stopped JAFA systems. I had an A3000 for a few years, and I was playing with RISC OS and doing quite a bit of playing with that quite a bit. I then went on to Windows systems and using the internet. I had an ASUS EEE notebook as well. And later on, I started playing with Raspberry Pis. I still have Raspberry Pis in operation. I have one running a Pi-hole ad blocker on my home network, so that all the computers on the network have ad blocking automatically in place. And I also had built a magic mirror. There's a magic mirror project for the Pi that where you can have two-way perspex in front of a computer screen and have your have the time and your diary and the weather forecast, everything coming up behind the mirror. And I modified that and added an alarm section to it, an alarm option, and I now have it as my alarm clock. I have my with a 7-inch touchscreen for the Pi, so that I can control it. But anyway, over the years and various house refurbishments, I disposed of about 95% of the JAFA stuff. I used to have a briefcase with all the circuits and the prints to go for the circuit board manufacturers. I used to have that, one of those, but that got thrown out because I was never, ever, ever going to go back to playing with the Electron again. But then someone bought me a present of an Electron, and that went into a cupboard unused. I wasn't interested. But then in October 18, I finally retired from the part-time job I'd taken post-retirement. And one of the things I did in my spare time, I was watching YouTube videos, and eventually saw some on 8-bit systems. And there's a guy called Ben Eater, I don't know if you've seen him, who made a 6502 computer on breadboard. And this stoked my interest in the old Electron that was stuck in the cupboard. So I got it out and started it up. And I still had the original Mode 7 demo unit, completely boxed from 1987. So I plugged that into it. But I didn't have a disk drive. I didn't even have a cassette recorder. I didn't have any of my add-ons apart from the ones I've shown you. And so I started casting around for information, and I found Stardot and the various archives. And luckily, just at that time, Gary at Ramtop, I don't know his second name, I'm afraid, had brought out his ELK SD unit for connecting SD cards to the Electron, and with help from Dave Hitchens, who supplied me with a master RAM board and a +1 and an AP6, and John Simpson had got his second processor going just at that time. So I was able to approach them and get those systems running. He was using a 128K RAM in the second processor, even though it was only a 64K system. So I modified it to run 2 banks, and then he suggested running 8 banks in a 512K RAM. So I did that. I designed the 512K system. He was using KeyCal, so he produced the little add-on board for me. And so now I have, and I bought a second Electron as well. So now I have 1 Electron that's unmodified, 1 with a master RAM board in it, the Mode 7 unit and the +1. And I'm using the Raspberry Pi HDMI adapter. I've just got 1. I use this monitor that's in front of me now for both PC and Electron. And here is a view of this is what I'm looking at with I have my PC keyboard balanced on top of the Electron at the moment, but you can see I've got there's the Electron with the Mode 7 unit, the +1 with the ELK SD and the second processor in it. And just in the corner, just at the bottom left-hand corner, amongst all the mess, you might be able to see the Raspberry Pi HDMI adapter running. So having got the second processor up and running successfully, 512K, I wanted something else to do. And I came across the guy at A2 Heaven, who was producing 65816 to 65C02 boards for the Apple II. And I thought I would give it a try. So I bought one and fitted it in my second processor. So there's the second processor with the 512K RAM and the 65816. It's still running in 64K mode, or should I say, it's still only using 64K of RAM. It's not using its extra banks that it has, but it is running as a proper 65816. And so my latest version of the E2P software, now to 5.2, it supports the 3 clients, the 6502, the C version, and the 65816. It supports up to 512K RAM, split into 8 banks. One of the banks is reserved for machine code or the ROM filing system. And the latest E2P on command allows you to select a language ROM from the bottom 7 ROM slots to load up if you want to have a language start. So what I do is I load it up with High Basic at startup. And oh yes, just mentioning the ROM filing system, this is the way I use it. I've modified John Hartson's Make RFS program, which actually produces our ROM filing system ROMs, but I modified it to produce a self-loading program that will so you use the RFS, you use the E2P RFS program to create a self-loading file, and once you've saved that file, then you can run it as a star command, and it then loads, and it loads the ROM filing system into the bank 7 of the E2P, and then the E2P ROM will understand the ROM filing system commands, and you can catalog what's in the filing system, and you can run files from the filing system. The 5.2 also includes a 65816 debugger. I got this from the Western Design Center 65816 manual, and they do have a listing of this debugger there. There are some bugs in it which I had to find, and I also had to modify it to work with my assembler. And I also added a wrapper to it to give a help and to allow you to set the various registers before running, before tracing a program. So you can list and trace programs that are in any of the banks in the E2P. It's obviously necessary to set the accumulator before you run a ROM, because Acorn ROMs need the accumulator set to 1 in order to run. Having done that, I then, having successfully got that running, I thought I would buy a second 65816 and install it straight into the Electron. So my second Electron now has the master RAM board and a 65816 in it, and that's running successfully. And I'm at the moment working on a support ROM to fit inside the +1 to manage the 65816. This also has a list and trace function. So here I'm tracing some 65816 code that's in the Electron memory. So it has the TSC and the TCD commands of the 65816. It's got 16-bit accumulator and 16-bit index register commands, and that's the program tracing it. And that particular section of the program is coded like this. I'm using BBASM because I'm comfortable with BBASM. I didn't really want to get into learning other assemblers as well as all the stuff I was doing. So what I do is I declare the 65816 opcodes as labels at the top of the program, and then and then when I'm within the program, I just use the equate byte operator to specify the label. And then because BBASM is an 8-bit system, and I'm assembling 16-bit commands, I need to put the high bit of the command in as an equate byte after the actual low part of the data, similar to, so there you've got the AND of FF00 and the compare with 0100 entered like that. Then had to deal with the I then had to deal with the vectors, the 65816 vectors, because of course they occur within the area that Acorn are using for their various operating system jumps. So in the Electron itself, it's essential to have the IRQ vector working. It won't work without it. And if you look at the IRQ vector, it's exactly where the OSRight character jump is. And the OSRight character is an indirect jump to location 02OE. So that means that the 2 bytes that are there are 6COE. So if I could have some code at EC6, it would intercept the IRQ, and I'd be able to run a 16-bit version of to convert to 8-bit before going to the Acorn interrupt routines. So this means that you have to have a page E filing system in order to have page E available for this. But luckily, the ELK-SD is a page E filing system, so I was able to claim page E and use that for the interrupt code. The NMI, I haven't yet got round to sorting out what to do about the NMI. It shares its address with it's part of the OSNewLine code, but break is part of OSASCII, and the code that's actually there at FFE6 is A9, is 07A9. No, I can't actually see it here because I've got a box over it. Where is it? It's at A907, isn't it? Yes, it's at A907. So by having code at A907 within my support ROM, I can use the break function, and that was what I was. So that's why I'm able to go back to this and trace code within the RAM area of the Electron by having the break. What the program does is insert the break command at those locations, and I can intercept it at A907. For completeness, here's what I do in the second processor. I've modified the commands for the OSNewLine and OSASCII, and I have at FFE3, which is where the OSASCII command is, I jump to FFC1, and then at FFC1 I do what OSASCII does, which is compare with a carriage return character. And then the OSNewLine function is at FFE7, which the lister has put it in the middle of a command there, but the command there is actually F8, which is set decimal. So what it does mean that when OSNewLine or OSASCII or OSNewLine run, they set decimal, then branch to their part of the code at the top, so that I'm able to get. Oh, and by the way, what that does is it leaves 2 bytes at FFE6, which can be 04F8, and that is an address within the second processor operating system. So I can jump to that for the break command. Yes, and yeah. So my current developments, I've already mentioned the support on the second processor for the second processor. That's pretty much finished apart from debugging at the moment. 65816 support on the Electron. Still got some way to go on that. And I've now started looking at Basic 128, which was the version for the master, which used 64K and 4 sideways RAMs. And so I've modified it to, I've modified the loader to load into the E2P. And there you've got, so when it runs there, you can see the high mem is at 20,000 and page is at 10,000. It's I've done it by modifying the PLD in the E2P, so that banks 3 to 6 share the bottom half of memory, the RAM in inverted commas, the RAM area of memory, because they have to do that because when you switch banks to look at what will be the ROM area of memory, you have to be able to still see the basic code. So I've changed it so that they share the low half of memory for those 4 banks, and that is all. I'd like a few closing credits. Gordon Cameron at Permanent Memory Systems, they showed faith in the second processor and really put me on the track to launching my own company. And also thanks to everyone here who archived my stuff so that I could remind myself about it. And I can't thank John Simpson enough for the work he put in over the years, reverse engineering my E2P stuff and redesigning the board, because without that I wouldn't have had the basis to go forward now. So that's it. That's my talk.
Thank you very much indeed for that fabulous talk. I maintain my position that you were designing and continue to design advanced add-ons for the Electron. So there's a few questions. One very basic one, first of all, from me, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but which particular processor was in the original E2P? Was it a 6502 or a 65C02?
No, it was a 6502, running at 2 megahertz. The original version, yes, it was a 6502. Yeah, didn't start trying the 6502 until very recently.
And so I have a question here from Ian, and he asks, how many people were involved with JAFA? Was it just you, or were there other people?
Well, I think the title of the article gives it away. The Computing Today, whatever it was, article. It was a one-man band. It was me. I had some help from a guy at work who photographed the PCBs for me and helped me produce the negatives to go to the printed circuit board manufacturers. But it was basically just me, and of course my wife, who had to answer the phone a lot and take orders and things. But as far as the actual design and construction and that, it was just me.
And I suppose, in a sense, that this next question, which is from Simon, it is in some ways sort of related to your experience of being a one-man band, because there's reference to a cease and desist letter from Slogger, yeah, regarding the RAM board. And Simon asked, what was your experience of the commercial environment in the 80s? Was it generally a friendly environment, or was it showing signs of a more cutthroat environment to come?
No, certainly at the 2 shows that I went to, it was very friendly. There was a lot of interaction between the various companies that were producing stuff. The cease and desist was really because I was basically copying their. It wasn't a direct copy. I'd modified it, but it was doing what their system did, and that was why they got upset about it.
And now a very straightforward question from Simon, different Simon from the last one. It is with your internal 65816, and I think Simon is referring to the E2P with the 65816, but he'll tell me if I'm wrong. Does the lid of the Electron still close?
Oh, no, it balances on top of it. Because the 65816 itself is on a little socket, it doesn't quite close. Sometimes I must say that at the moment I only have one lid. The second Electron I bought was very yellow, so I decided to do a bit of retrobrighting on it. And because my son lives in Barcelona, back in March I asked him to take the lid back with him and put it out in the sunlight to do the retrobrighting. And then the lockdown struck, so I haven't had that lid back yet. So when I want to use the Electron, I have to swap the lids over anyway. But when I eventually get a permanent lid for it, I'm going to have to think of something to fit. It's only about a couple of millimeters between the lid and the rest of the case to support it.
And this is, I think, a very interesting question, but it's a couple of questions about the Mode 7 board. And the question is, how does the OS deal with it? And can you just type Mode 7 like you could on a bead to go into Mode 7? And if so, how does that work?
Well, the Mode 7 operating system, you switch it on Mode 7 by typing a command, star Mode 7 on or star M7 dot, and break. And once you've, to activate the ROM, and once you've done that, the ROM is activated, and you then just type the normal BBC commands, Mode 6, Mode 7, Mode 4, Mode 2, and it swaps between them. As far as the hardware board, the hardware unit was concerned, the full proper Mode 7 unit, there was I think I must have got it from Acorn in the BBC. There's one address, one high order address on the 6845, I think it is, the controller, that controls whether it's selecting the output from the Mode 7 unit or the output from the Electron. The Electron has there's a, I don't know if you're familiar with the unit, but it has a video lead that takes the video from the Electron and then switches between that and its own Mode 7 output, depending on the setting of the address line on the 68, or the output line, the video address line on the 6845 controller.
Okay, I mean, this may be my ignorance here, and I should know this, but how do you extend the basic command set in that way? Because obviously you must have some way of, I mean, but Mode 7 works on the Electron, doesn't it? Natively, it just doesn't do anything.
It selects Mode 6. So within the operating system, I have to detect the mode commands.
But that's in the operating system rather than in the ROM, so you can interact.
That's in the Mode 7. I mean, that's in the Mode 7 ROM. I detect the VDU commands and detect when a mode command is being issued, and use that to operate the switch between the Mode 7 and the others.
And also on the subject of the Mode 7 board, do you have a rough idea of the total number of sales you had for that board?
I don't, I'm sorry. No, I don't. I couldn't say. I know that I was often having to reorder the cases. The trouble was that because the turnover was low, I didn't really have much excess money to buy the cases, so I could only buy a few cases at a time. So I was quite often caught short by orders coming in, and I didn't have the cases for them, so I had to order the cases, and there was then something like a 4 or 5 week delay on the production of the cases. So I was having to, I did have to go through this process a lot of times. So, but I couldn't say how many times.
And so another question again on the Mode 7 board in relation to that. Do you get the memory advantage of using Mode 7 in that high mem rises up to 7C00?
Yes, yes, you do. The only thing is that when the Electron resets, when it boots, it clears the what would be the screen memory from the Mode 6 screen memory from 6,000 upwards. So I had I have a button on the top of the Mode 7 unit which actually works via the NMI. There's a break, and when you break with that, it clears the doesn't clear the memory below 7C00.
Yes, now this is a question, I'm not sure whether you're going to know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway, and I think somebody might have actually answered it as well. So do you know if any of the Electron emulators emulate the teletext or Micronet ROM systems?
I don't know. I've seen at the ABug show in, I think it was November, that I went to one of them, and Hoglet there had an Electron emulator running, and I noticed that it had a Mode 7 startup screen, but exactly I don't know how they achieved that, or whether any of the stuff that I had to put into my system to cope with the various BBC hardware addresses in Micronet, whether that would whether they would work or not, I couldn't say.
So Nigel, who is one of the developers for the MAME emulation system, has said that the ROMPlus board is emulated in MAME. That's there's quite a lot of things are emulated in MAME, certainly on the Acorn side.
Does that mean that he has a copy of the ROMPlus ROM to operate it? Because
yes, that's the one you're missing.
Yes, that's the one I'm missing.
You're missing that.
Yeah.
Yes, no, sorry. So yes, so Nigel, so it's Perno, P-E-R-N-O-D is his handle on the forum, and yes, he says here that the ROM was found last year from someone in the Facebook group. And the version they have reports JAFA ROMPlus-144 ROM expander version 3.0.
Oh, all right. Yes, well, I'd be interested in that. I'll contact him then.
Yes,
you might be able to send me a copy.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I mean, if it's on MAME, I think it's available to download anyway if it points you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then just one final question from the chat, I think. So I better read this out as well as Mark has commented that this is a very interesting talk. And comments that he has 2 of those 65816 little adapter boards, one for his master and one for his Electron.
Yeah.
But he hasn't fitted either of them yet, so we'll have to see how he does with
go
that.
Ahead.
But there's a final question from Simon, and that is, are there any other bits of hardware that you're still looking to obtain back, as it were? Sorry, that's not from Simon, that's from Ian.
I can't think of anything really. If anyone has one of my RS423 adapters, I'd be interested. Obviously can't use it now, but I'd be interested to have it just for completeness.
Well, I'm sure if somebody has one, they'll at least let you know.
Yeah.
Now, I think at this stage, we can open up questions to anybody who wants to ask them direct. We have a few. Let's just have a look at the timetable. So we've got a few minutes left. Can I just ask that anybody who, I'm going to do the same myself, anyone who chooses to ask questions now, obviously you have to unmute yourself, but can you also start your video, or at least do so when you're logged in with some kind of icon that identifies you, because it's very difficult on the recording if we just have a blank screen when somebody asks a question.
Can I just say, oh, it's gone. I've had a chat message from Simon. Well, if I can just open up a, oh right, yes, he sent me a link to it, so I'm just opening it up on in the web browser so I can look at it later. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Carry on.
Yes. So if anybody else has any questions for John, please do ask them now. I think that suggests that all of the questions have been asked by chat, which is not a problem, John, because we had quite a few.
Yes.
So thank you very much indeed for that talk. That really was absolutely fascinating. Lots of interesting ideas, and it's nice to see that your work from back in the day is continuing to be built upon right up to now.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed for that.
Okay.